So how has Keir Starmer performed in all of this? This wouldn't be what they planned in their first 50 days, a row with Elon Musk and a week of violent protests. But it has happened, and Keir Starmer has responded. The question is how well in people's eyes. Let's talk to Tom Baldwin, who knows Keir Starmer very well. He's his biographer, of course, former Labour Party Director of Communications and Strategy. Morning, Tom.
Hello.
The polling yesterday on Keir Starmer's performance wasn't great, actually. I think 49% of people said he was handling it badly. I wonder if it's impossible to handle these things entirely well. What's your judgment of how it's gone for him and how he's managed to rise to the challenge or otherwise on this?
I mean, you're right. I mean, this is certainly not something that would have been on their list of challenges, far-right fascist hooligans in the first month. I'm not sure what else he could have done better. What I am sure is that there is potential to get this very, very badly wrong. And if you think that election had been held this autumn, probably in a run-up to a Tory leadership contest, can we imagine what the last Conservative government would have been doing, and how some ministers, we've seen some of them out in the last week, would have been reacting to these fascist riots? I think so. I think for a lot of people, there's some relief that, as Baroness Varsi, the former Tory chair, said yesterday, that the sane squad are in charge.
I wonder that the other issue for him may be that by acting to try and quell this, it does reveal a whole series of problems which people knew existed anyway, but it does bring into relief the scale of the problems the country is facing. And he's 4 weeks in, he won't be held responsible for them, but at some point he will be. We can get the courts working to bang up someone for a riot a week ago, but they don't do that in any other respect for any other public order offence. If someone shoplifts next week, they might not ever be arrested at all. It does raise the spectre of the immigration problem. We know that the small boats numbers are going to be rising as the weather continues good. So is there an issue that even as he sort of stamps down in one area and shows he got some degree of control, it does really reveal the vista of difficulties that he'll be facing in the years to come?
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking to people. I mean, one of the problems you've got is, when he was in charge of the CPS in 2011, you still had a functioning justice system, and he could do night courts. And that was interesting. That was a response to riots about the death of a young black man in London. And the idea that Keir Starmer is not even-handed, I think that's something that people should bear in mind when they throw around phrases like two-tier. But certainly, the justice system is one of the many public services that are very, very stretched at the moment. They've had to, rush around to find spaces in jails for the people that are now being convicted of hooliganism in these riots. So there is a huge problem across a range of issues, which this probably wouldn't have been top of the list, but it has exposed another challenge. I mean, I think in some ways Keir Starmer's, I mean, I wouldn't say he's fortunate, but this is a territory he knows pretty well.
Yeah.
He has already responded to the last big riots that we've had. He's got experiences of it. And I think what you're seeing now with the early convictions going through, with the CBS coming under quite a lot of pressure, I believe, from Downing Street to get on with the job faster, you're seeing some of that experience of how you get a deterrent to the kind of people we've seen behaving appallingly out.
But he's going to have to put his money where his mouth is here, Tom. Because we were talking to Diane Johnson, the policing minister, and I was saying, if you want us, if this is evidence that if you have an efficient judicial system where when people commit crimes, they're swiftly arrested, swiftly prosecuted, swiftly convicted, and look, lo and behold, it stops future crimes being committed. If we accept that that's one of the lessons we're taking from this last week, you're going to have to invest heavily in the judicial system to make that happen more broadly. And she couldn't say that she was going to do that. And Labour, of course, couldn't say in the election period they were willing to spend extra money on the judicial system. And there may not be money for it. So that's going to be the problem, isn't it? That ultimately he might want to do something to fix this, but he might not be able to.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful. Look, there's clearly a deterrent effect if I think you're going out in the streets and smashing up some shops and looting, and then you see your mate on the front page of a tabloid newspaper having getting 3 years. That's a deterrent effect. I'm not sure that all the other people who are being given prison sentences in our sort of rather weird Anglo-Saxon world in which everybody has to go for jail for everything that's ever in a newspaper, which is a campaign at some point. I'm not sure that that is right, and I do think we lock up too many people in this country. So I think there's a danger of learning the wrong lesson from the success of deterrence in this one area and then applying it everywhere else.
Interesting stuff. Well, it's been a hell of a first 50 days, as you might imagine. Tom, good to speak to you. Thank you for joining us.
If you were worried that you would wake up to news of more violent protests across the country last night, you would be in the majority. And there were pockets of trouble, arrests in Bristol, Croydon and South London, to name a couple. But what emerged was largely peaceful. Tom Witherow was covering events for The Times. He's been following the story and keeping us up to speed on the programme all this week. And we can speak to him now. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
So it was much quieter than anticipated. I mean, people were actually very worried yesterday. You know, people that I spoke to, people that I saw on social media taking photographs of police vans on their streets, shops, offices, etc., closing, saying people could go home early, could be escorted home in some instances. But it didn't happen. It was much quieter than anticipated. So do we know why that was?
So we don't know for certain. My impression is that the plans that were put around on far-right Telegram groups, starting from Monday morning and then through the day, it kind of spread onto wider social media after that, they were expressly violent, which is different to what last week's rallies were planned as. These ones were sent around with fire emojis. There were people joking that they were going to be, quote unquote, mostly peaceful protests, as a kind of innuendo. And I think that some of those influencers that we've been talking about this week, who have got people out onto the streets last week, therefore tended not to promote them. And I think maybe what we're learning is actually just how influential those people are. And it's perhaps also the fact that Telegram does remain a sort of fringe social media, and that perhaps people didn't know where the locations were. And the ones that got large numbers of counter-protesters were then the location was taken by a more mainstream anti-racist group like Stand Up to Racism, which has prominent Twitter and Instagram accounts, for example, and that was how the location got well publicized. I think even Tommy Robinson does not. He has tried to make sure that he is not organising any or promoting something that is expressly violent. And he's very clear that when he does do a rally, which is absolutely his own, that it should be, it should be intended to be peaceful.
Yeah, we're going to get more into Telegram in a second because I don't know much about Telegram at all, and I'm actually quite looking forward to learning a bit more about it. This is probably an obvious comment, and many people are making this point that if you look at the front page of the Sun today, there's pictures of 15 people who've been jailed already, 14 men, 1 woman. Presumably, that stuff filters across social media as well, and that must have had a deterrent effect.
Yeah, I think I could certainly detect a change of tone yesterday. Firstly, we had the news in the morning that someone had been jailed for 3 years for their involvement in riots in Southport, and the statement that they put out through their defence lawyer said that they were ashamed of what they had done to their community. Quite powerful words from somebody, and so I think that sort of that pump of anger followed by that intense regret so soon, and we must take our hat off to prosecutors for preparing those cases so quickly at a time of national emergency. And then secondly, the other thing that stuck out to me was Lawrence Fox, who is a what I called in one piece part of the respectable right. He's somebody who's appeared on BBC programmes talking about sort of mainstream political concerns, albeit in increasingly sort of extreme language sometimes. But he condemned people who rioted and looted on on Twitter yesterday, which goes against what what some people believe, which is that people like him tacitly agree that violence action might be the only way to get the government to listen to concerns about migrant hotels and what they see as mass immigration. But he expressly said, don't do this.
Yeah.
These people are thugs.
It's interesting stuff. Tom, thank you very much for guiding us through it all. That is Tom Witherow from The Times.